Today I come to you with a word straight from heaven. The Holy Spirit has spoken, and our assignment is rooted in Genesis 21:14. I believe God has something transformative for someone in this room or watching online right now. This isn't just another sermon. This is a moment for divine intervention. If you've been stuck weighed down by decisions or paralyzed by fear of the unknown, today is your day for breakthrough. Turn to your neighbor and say, the courage to change course. The power of divine direction lies in its ability to guide us beyond what we see and understand. In Genesis 21:14, we find Abraham faced with an emotionally complex and deeply challenging directive from God. Abraham, a man of great faith, is instructed to send away Hagar and Ishmael, his own flesh and blood. This is not a decision born of human reasoning, but one commanded by God himself. It's a moment that tests Abraham's trust, his obedience, and his willingness to let go of what he loves to follow a higher calling. This narrative reminds us that divine direction often confronts our sense of security and forces us to grapple with the tension between our emotions and God's will. Abraham loved his son Ishmael. Sending him away must have pierced his heart, but he chose to obey because he trusted the voice of the Lord above his personal desires. It shows us that divine guidance isn't always about comfort. Sometimes it's about challenge. God's plans are higher than our plans, and his thoughts surpass ours. What he calls us to may not always make sense in the moment, but it is always aligned with his perfect purpose. The beauty of this story lies in the assurance God gives even in the midst of difficult instructions. When God tells Abraham to listen to Sarah and cast out Hagar and Ishmael, he does not abandon them. He promises to make a nation of Ishmael because he is Abraham's seed. This demonstrates that God's guidance, though it may seem harsh or perplexing, always carries provision and a broader plan. The steps of obedience may be steep, but they are never without God's grace and faithfulness. In our own lives, divine direction might call us to walk away from relationships, opportunities, or paths we've invested in deeply. These moments of decision test the very core of our faith. Do we trust God enough to surrender what feels safe for what he says is right? Are we willing to trade our comfort for his command? It takes courage to move forward when the path is unclear, yet this is where faith is forged. Divine direction requires us to lean not on our own understanding, but on God's infinite wisdom. God's guidance also brings with it a sense of clarity that enables us to act, even when the steps are painful. It does not negate the emotional toll of obedience, but provides the strength to carry it out. Abraham rose early in the morning, prepared provisions, and sent Hagar and Ishmael away. This act of obedience shows us that God's word must take precedence over our personal attachments. Through divine direction, we come to understand that the calling on our lives may not always align with our expectations or desires. Still, it is always leading us toward his greater purpose. Trusting God's voice means believing that even the hardest decisions are working together for good, drawing us closer to the fulfillment of his promise. The cost of change often requires a willingness to step into uncertainty and endure discomfort. When Abraham faced the challenge of sending Hagar and Ishmael away, it wasn't simply about following a directive. It was about bearing the weight of the consequences that came with it. Change is never free. It demands something from us, our stability, our comfort, our perceptions, and sometimes even our relationships. Abraham had to reconcile the love he had for Ishmael with the obedience he owed to God. The weight of this decision was immense, as it involved letting go of something deeply personal. Change often challenges our sense of control, forcing us to confront what we are willing to surrender. It demands a recalibration of our priorities, a stripping away of what no longer aligns with where God is leading us. This process is rarely without pain, as it shakes the foundations of what feels familiar and safe. In Abraham's case, the act of sending Hagar and Ishmael into the wilderness signified not just a physical separation, but also an emotional and spiritual recalibration. It meant trusting God's promise to care for them even when the path ahead seemed desolate and uncertain. In our own lives, the cost of change might manifest in ways that challenge our courage and faith. It could mean walking away from a career that no longer aligns with our calling, stepping out of a toxic relationship, or leaving behind old habits that hinder our growth. These decisions often come with a sense of loss as we let go of what we've invested in or what has become a part of our identity. The cost is not just external, it's deeply internal, requiring us to wrestle with our fears, doubts, and insecurities. However, change also holds the promise of transformation. The pain of letting go is often the precursor to the birth of something new and greater. In Abraham's story, while the separation was painful, it made way for the fulfillment of God's promise through Isaac. It also paved the way for Ishmael to become a great nation as God had promised. This dual blessing reveals that the cost of change is not without purpose. It is a necessary step in the unfolding of God's greater plan, even when we cannot see it at the moment. Embracing change requires us to trust that the sacrifice is worth the reward. It is an act of faith to believe that what lies ahead is better than what we are leaving behind, even when the evidence is not immediately visible. This trust does not eliminate the challenges, but it gives us the strength to endure them. The cost of change may feel overwhelming, but it is through this process that we grow, evolve, and align ourselves with God's will. The courage to pay the cost of change is what separates those who remain stuck from those who move forward. It is the willingness to face the discomfort of transition, the uncertainty of the unknown, and the pain of letting go that leads to breakthrough and transformation. This cost is not a loss, but an investment in what God has planned for us, a step toward a future filled with promise and purpose. Facing the reality of our past decisions can be one of the most challenging yet transformative acts of courage. There are moments in life when we must confront the choices that brought us to where we are, acknowledging the missteps, the errors, and the places where we veered off course. This process demands a vulnerability that few are willing to embrace because it means admitting that we didn't have all the answers or that our pride, impatience, or ignorance played a role in shaping the path we took. Yet it is through this honest reckoning with our past that the seeds of growth are sown. It's not uncommon for people to cling to their mistakes, choosing to remain loyal to them out of fear of the disruption that change might cause. Admitting a wrong decision can feel like dismantling a house we've spent years building, even if that house no longer serves us. This reluctance often stems from the ego's resistance to humility. To confront our past decisions requires setting aside pride, silencing the voice that says, "What will people think?" Or "How can I undo this without losing face?" It means recognizing that clinging to a mistake doesn't protect us, it binds us. The longer we avoid facing these decisions, the deeper we sink into the mire of regret and frustration. Regret has a way of becoming a silent companion, lingering in the background of our lives and whispering reminders of what could have been. It colors our thoughts, shapes our actions, and limits our ability to fully embrace the present. Yet regret is not a permanent prison, it is a signal, a call to action that invites us to learn, adjust, and move forward with greater wisdom. This process requires a deliberate choice to prioritize freedom over familiarity. Change is disruptive, it shakes up routines, alters relationships, and often demands sacrifices. But remaining stuck in a situation born of past decisions leads to a different kind of disruption, one that steals joy, diminishes potential, and stifles the soul. When we avoid confronting these decisions, we carry the weight of them into every aspect of our lives. The unresolved tension manifests in our work, our relationships, and even our spiritual journey, creating barriers that prevent us from experiencing the fullness of what God has for us. Facing past decisions is not about dwelling in guilt or shame, but about stepping into the freedom of accountability. It is about saying, yes, I made that choice, but I am not bound by it. I have the power through God's grace to make a new choice today. This is where transformation begins. It starts with acknowledging where we went wrong, seeking guidance and wisdom and being willing to endure the discomfort of change. The courage to face past decisions is an act of faith. It is a declaration that we trust God's ability to redeem, restore, and rewrite our stories. It requires believing that no mistake is too great for His grace, no path too far from His reach. By confronting what once held us back, we open ourselves to the possibility of a new chapter, one marked not by regret, but by renewal, growth, and purpose. Change requires courage because it is often accompanied by pain, uncertainty, and discomfort. To move from what is familiar to what is unknown demands strength, not just of the body, but of the mind and spirit. It is easy to stay where you are, even when the place you stand is full of frustration and dissatisfaction. People often choose the familiarity of misery over the uncertainty of freedom because freedom requires faith. Faith asks you to trust in what you cannot yet see, to step out into territory that you cannot fully map out in your mind. The path of change forces us to surrender our need for control, and for many that surrender feels like the greatest risk of all. Making the decision to change often means leaving behind systems, habits, and relationships that no longer serve you. These systems can feel like crutches. They may not be helping you move forward, but they give the illusion of stability. When you pull those crutches away, the fear of falling can feel paralyzing, yet staying where you are can be just as damaging. A life that resists change is a life that stops growing. What was once a temporary place of refuge becomes a permanent prison if you refuse to move forward. The real battle happens within. It is the conflict between the voice of fear and the voice of possibility. Fear will tell you that you are not capable, that you are not strong enough, that the cost of change is too high. Fear will whisper reminders of past failures and project worst-case scenarios into the future. But possibility reminds you that there is something greater beyond where you are right now. It tells you that there is more to your life, more to your purpose, and that God's promise does not expire just because you have been in the wrong place for too long. This battle between fear and possibility is not fought once and for all. It is a recurring struggle. Every step forward requires you to silence fear and choose faith. It demands that you take action even when you don't have all the answers. The courage to change does not mean you won't feel fear. Courage is the act of moving forward in spite of it. It is the ability to look fear in the face and say, I am moving anyway. Pain is another reason people resist change. Change disrupts what is comfortable even when comfortable is not healthy. Pain might come in the form of separation, loss, or letting go of a version of yourself that you have outgrown. The truth is that pain is often the price of progress. Just like a seed must break open to grow, something within us must break for us to step into a new version of ourselves. This breaking does not destroy us. It makes room for something greater to take root. Growth hurts, but staying the same costs far more. To embrace change is to take ownership of your future. It means choosing purpose over passivity, freedom over fear, and possibility over stagnation. Though the path may be difficult, the rewards far outweigh the struggle. When you choose to move forward, you align yourself with what God has planned for your life. Change may cost you something, but staying stuck will cost you everything. Choosing to change course often means facing the discomfort of confronting mistakes from the past. It requires a level of humility that many find difficult to embrace. The decision to admit you are wrong, to acknowledge that the path you are on no longer aligns with your purpose, and to take the necessary steps to correct your trajectory is no small feat. It is not just about admitting an error, it is about embracing the vulnerability that comes with saying, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm willing to start again. This willingness to change course is what separates those who grow and thrive from those who remain stagnant. Admitting past mistakes often feels like relinquishing a piece of your pride. People hold tightly to their decisions, even when those decisions are clearly leading them in the wrong direction, because it feels safer to defend the choice than to dismantle it. It is easier to justify the continuation of a flawed journey than to pause and say, this isn't working. The ego resists correction because it views the need to change as a weakness. Yet the truth is that there is immense strength in being able to self-correct, to realign with what is right, even when it is inconvenient or challenging. Correcting a mistake can also create waves that impact more than just the individual making the decision. Changing course can disrupt relationships, shift dynamics, and force others to reevaluate their own positions. This ripple effect often deters people from making necessary changes. The thought of causing discomfort or upheaval for others can lead to hesitation and procrastination. But staying on a misguided path to maintain the comfort of those around you is a recipe for long-term dissatisfaction and regret. Real change requires the courage to confront not only your own fears, but also the potential reactions of those affected by your decision. There's also a fear of what lies ahead. Correcting a mistake means stepping into unknown territory, into a future that is unwritten and unfamiliar. Many cling to their current circumstances, no matter how unfulfilling, because the alternative feels too uncertain. It takes faith to believe that the discomfort of correction will lead to a better outcome. It takes resilience to endure the growing pains that come with shifting directions. Yet, it is through these very shifts that growth happens, that new opportunities emerge, and that purpose is rediscovered. Those who possess the courage to confront their mistakes and change course demonstrate a unique strength. They are willing to face their own flaws, accept responsibility for their choices, and put in the work to forge a new path. They recognize that living in denial or clinging to past decisions only prolongs the inevitable realization that change is necessary. It is not about perfection. It is about progress. It is about recognizing when a choice no longer serves your purpose and having the resolve to do something about it. Correcting a mistake is rarely easy, but it is always worth it. The process may be painful and the path forward may be uncertain, but it leads to freedom and growth. It leads to the possibility of living in alignment with your purpose and experiencing the fullness of what life has to offer. The decision to change course is an act of faith, a declaration that you will no longer settle for less than the life you were created to live. It is a testament to the power of grace, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of what is right. Living with regret is one of the most debilitating experiences a person can endure. It is like carrying an invisible weight that grows heavier with each passing day. Regret is not just about the choices we made, but the opportunities we let slip away and the potential we left untapped. It is the haunting thought that we could have done more, been more, or taken a different path that would have led to a better outcome. Regret can paralyze us, making us feel as though the past is an anchor that keeps us from moving forward. The fear of facing that regret, of confronting the mistakes we've made, keeps many from taking the necessary steps to change course. Many people find themselves stuck in situations that are less than ideal because they are afraid of the disruption change will cause. They have already invested so much time, effort, or emotional energy into a decision that changing course feels like a betrayal of all they've worked for. It's easier to keep going, even when the journey isn't leading anywhere productive, than to risk the unknown that comes with altering course. However, the real tragedy is not in the pain of making a change, but in the pain of staying the same, trapped in a cycle of regret and missed chances. The fear of regret can be paralyzing, but it is important to recognize that the cost of remaining stagnant can be far greater than the cost of change. Living with the what-ifs of life can rob us of the joy and fulfillment we were meant to experience. We end up in a constant state of wondering what could have been if only we had chosen differently. The longer we live in this space of regret, the more it shapes our identity and robs us of our potential. It becomes harder to break free, and we begin to accept the mediocre or even the harmful as the norm, simply because we don't want to face the discomfort of correcting our path. The real pain comes from realizing how much we have compromised. We've sacrificed our joy, our peace, our sense of purpose, all in an attempt to avoid the discomfort of changing course. We tell ourselves that we are being practical, that we are being patient, that we are being strong by sticking it out. But in truth, we are merely postponing the inevitable. Deep down, we know that the life we're leading not the one we were meant to live. We know that there is more within us waiting to be unlocked, but we fear what it will take to make that happen. However, it is important to remember that regret doesn't have to be permanent. It is not a life sentence, but a signal that something in our lives needs to shift. It is a moment of reflection and opportunity to learn and grow. Regret, when acknowledged and addressed, can become the catalyst for change. It forces us to examine our choices, our behaviors, and our decisions with honesty. It brings us face to face with the reality that we are in control of our future, that we have the power to change our circumstances and our mindset. What keeps many from overcoming regret is the belief that they have run out of time or that the opportunity for change has passed. But this is simply not true. There is always time to correct course, to make the changes that lead to a more fulfilled and purposeful life. The key is to act. Do not let regret define who you are or where you're going. The power to change is within you, and every moment is an opportunity to make a new choice that will bring you closer to the life you are meant to live. Living with regret can be excruciating, but it does not have to be your reality. By facing the need to change course, by acknowledging the mistakes, and letting go of the fear of disruption, you can step into a future that is free from the chains of regret. You can begin to live the life you are always meant to lead, a life of growth, purpose, and fulfillment. The courage to change course may feel intimidating, but it is the only way to truly move forward and escape the prison of regret.